Okay, well, I'll make a start then. Thanks everyone. Welcome for joining. Welcome to the. Thanks for joining and welcome to the session. I'm just going to present some slides very quickly. So, I'm Leon Lloyd. I'm the business development manager with Edumondo, and yeah, I'll just give a short introduction to our portfolio, the context of simulations, and then I'll hand over to our friend and colleague, Dr. Amit Mitra from UE Bristol, and then we'll start to play the simulation as well. So just a little bit of background into simulations. So as you know, we are a provider of management simulations. We've been developing these for 20 years. And some of the main purposes of developing simulations are around improving student attendance, engagement, linking to continuation at sort of early levels of higher education, of course, but also meeting the expectations of students now who increasingly want high quality digital resources and have high demand for things which have a good user interface and a good visual appeal. Increasingly, students are using these simulations, of course, to allow students to apply their theoretical knowledge, not only within the dedicated modules or courses they sit in, but in a wider context for the whole program as well. Often universities will feed these back into the recruitment process as well to help with the student offer. And it links to, of course, quality assurance and reputation, and crucially, employability skills as well. So as well as the simulations being a chance for students to apply their subject matter theory, it's also, of course, a chance for them to develop those competencies and those skills as well. In terms of employability skills, well, this is not an exhaustive list of skills which are developed within the simulations, but it does speak to sort of some of the skills which students gain. So, for example, in all our simulations, the students have to start off by undertaking a range of internal analysis on the financials and on the sales history of the products that they're selling, but also the external analysis as well, the news items and everything else that's going on. So that really speaks quite strongly to the sort of critical thinking and the advanced analytical skills, problem solving. In their teams, the students will, of course, be having to allocate responsibilities. Who's responsible for which? What sort of structure should the team have? And they'll be working to deadlines each round. So that's, of course, time management and planning. All our simulations feature a business plan where teams, after they've analyzed the data, they have to, within their teams, negotiate and persuade each other of what their chosen strategy should be. So that's really the group work part. And of course, speaking to the whole digital literacies piece, the technical abilities come across really strongly in this simulation because it prepares students again for another platform which students have to work within, which of course is similar to the sorts of softwares they'll be using in their real world of work. Just two more slides from me, so this one and one more before I hand over to Amit. So this slide really shows, well, on the right, some screenshots of the sorts of simulations that we have, but also just in general terms, how things work. So the simulation you'll be seeing today is the phone benches simulation. That's the one you'll be participating in and hearing from Amit as well about. But they're all web-based, so they just work on the browser. There's nothing to install, and they work on any device as well. And students will be placed into teams, and they'll take over an existing company with some trading history already, and they'll have to manage that company through a number of rounds or years. So each round equates to 1 year, and usually one round sits across 1 week of study across the semester. From a time investment perspective, it's quite flexible depending on how much time is available and how we set it up as well. But crucially, all our simulations have this dynamic algorithm, which makes it very competitive. And that's really what drives the engagement. So each team's decisions will impact on the performance of the other student teams. So it's not that students are competing against a computer. Their direct competitors are the other student teams on the same course, which is crucial to achieve the level of engagements that you need. We cater for all student levels at higher education, and a number of our simulations are very flexible as well in terms of the way we can add or remove different things and simplify them or make them more complex. Perhaps one more thing is just around the assessment. So whilst the simulation will produce a ranking list at the end, well, and after each round, the ranking list will change as the simulation is played through the rounds. But This ranking list, of course, that's what's driving the competition. So all the teams really want to win, but that's not necessarily to say that the ranking list should be used for assessment. It quite often is, but if so, it will just be a proportion of the overall credit for the student. So usually the students are assessed by some combination of individual reflective piece and perhaps group presentation, but always based upon the activity within the simulation, of course. And this last slide here, this just shows that we do have a range of other simulations as well. So we are able to be that experiential learning partner to a business school. And a number of these simulations are further tailorable to make them appropriate for other courses too. So I'm going to stop sharing now and say hi to our guest speaker, Dr. Amit Mitra. Hi, Amit. How are you? And
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
I'm happy to hand over to you, and well, feel free to take over.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Leon. So, can everyone see the slide that I'm showing
Yes.
now? Yeah.
Yes.
So, I'm going to talk about Phone Ventures, which is the simulation which we use for one of the modules, compulsory modules in the MBA program, which is called System Structures and Operations. And in that module, there's a section on operations management. And so to enable students to understand decision making as part of operations management, we provide the simulation and the students participate in it. So here, I think the underlying objective is to make develop an experiential platform for students to make decisions in. In the university sector, over time, what is happening is that things like placements, which used to be mechanisms through which students would get an opportunity to experience the real world, are becoming increasingly difficult to provide as student numbers increase. And so we are constantly on the lookout for providing this kind of a dimension, which will make students understand some of the characteristics of the real world and the uncertainties and what does a manager do in those kinds of situations. One of the other areas that I am particularly interested in is this, that when students do an MBA program, they need to identify various debates in management. And so just identifying those debates is not good enough. We would like our students to engage in conversations about those debates that managers would face, the students would face when they move to their actual jobs. So these two dimensions, one is making things experiential, and the other is to develop conversations around those debates, are the two drivers that I felt would help students. By choosing Phone Ventures, they would be able to move to that kind of a platform. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about these kinds of areas. One of the things is antecedents. So what's happened before they begin? What are the types of expectations in operations management that would work best when you are using a simulation like Phone Ventures? I'll also talk about some of the other simulations that we have used, the type of reasoning or rationale that we use to choose the simulation that we are using, and the fit between expectations of students and what the simulation can offer. And finally, of course, the so what, that whether it is all worth it, or just by providing the simulation, do students actually get that experiential dimension that we are keen on? So that's the dimension. And finally, of course, I'd like to answer questions if you have any about this. So So the context is this, that here it's operations management. And so they would go through various lectures, theoretical inputs, case studies that they would do in class. However, the crucial element of decision making as managers is something that would need a different kind of an environment to carry out. And here, there needs to be a kind of trade-off between risk-taking and the real world of crises, of seeing the type of uncertainty that exists in the marketplace. And so those kinds of dimensions cannot be replicated through lectures or case study analysis. So that's something that was quite important. In addition to this, one of the expectations that I had conveyed to Milo quite some time ago was the fact that I wanted the students to realize that management decision making is never in a vacuum. So the world, the developments around the world should also have an impact. And so here, things like Brexit, restrictive trade policies of different countries, all of these different kinds of settings would also impact on running a company which has got international connotations, which operate in different parts of the world. So that is something that I wanted, and that has been incorporated into Phone Ventures. It is also quite a kind of fluid and dynamic state. So as Leon was saying, that from week to week, situations change. There could be a kind of a warehouse fire, there could be a transportation strike, there could be, so the lorry drivers might strike work. And so different kinds of, problems arise if you are a manager. And how do you choose objectives? How do you make sure that these objectives are achievable? Because there are some objectives that are really difficult to achieve. There are some objectives which are, as a society, people would like to see those kinds of objectives, like the green objectives or sustainable objectives. So there are these kinds of that mix, which is also available through Phone Ventures. And as I was saying earlier, that in business schools, one of the things that used to be quite helpful for students to understand the real world was the use of placements. Now, MBA programs are delivered over 1 year. And of that 1 year, let's say 3 months or 4 months will be on the dissertation. So in an environment where there are so many other modules and other types of inputs that will go in, it is very difficult to have placements. And so my objective was to also create placement-like experiences. And Phone Ventures is certainly one of those where students can get an idea of the real world. And they are in different teams, and they are competing against each other. It's a dynamic world because every week the team rankings change. And it is quite possible that a team which is not very high up eventually makes it to the top because of the type of decisions that they make, the type of objectives that they set, the type of risks that they take. And of course, as Leon was saying, decision making happens in a kind of a conversational mode where they are talking to each other every week, and they're confirming decisions. So these are some of the dimensions that I wanted in the simulation that we eventually got from Edumundo, and that's Phone Ventures. So in the case of Phone Ventures, essentially students have a phone company, phone manufacturing company that they run. And so in this, there are various kinds of decisions. Decisions like, for instance, relocating or opening a branch in a different part of the world. Decisions like spending money on marketing, promoting the organization, and decisions of hiring people, decisions of selling things at certain prices. So these are there are a combination of decisions that have to be made. And sometimes you have teams where there are distinct sort of roles that students play. So there could be someone who looks after marketing, someone who looks after finance, someone who looks after something else, HR. Uh, that practice is also there. At the same time, there are teams which are kind of more democratic. Everyone has a say. Um, and so eventually students kind of develop their own structures. What works for them might be different from what works for other teams. Again, this is a human effort. So again, there are certain students who might be prepared to take risks in comparison to their peers, greater risks, I mean, and so on. So at the end of the week, they have to agree a set of decisions, and these are then entered into the system. And based on what other teams have decided, the algorithm for Phone Ventures ranks each team at the end of every week. So every week is equivalent to a year's trading. So in the format that we use for our MBA students, we usually have 8-year simulation. So over 8 years. One of the reasons for that is because there is enough time for students or teams to recover from, if they were in a lower ranked position, they can recover, they can make changes to what they are trying to do, and then they can ascend and be on top of the rank, the list. So this is something that happens. In addition to this, what we have also done is that we have created a continuous assessment process. So the continuous assessment process is that after every 2 years of trading or every 2 weeks of trading, each individual student, not in a group, each individual student has to write a 500-word blog post, so reflective blog post, where they have to reflect upon the decision making that has taken place, the differences of opinions which might have been there, different kinds of things that they talk about. So our experience is that when we begin, the students say 500 words is a lot of words, we cannot write so much. And then they say after the second year or third year's trading, they would say to us that 500 words is too little. We need much more, the word count needs to be much bigger so that we can accommodate the complexity or the range of things that we discussed and agreed upon. So this is something that is quite interesting, and how the competition develops among teams, the strategy making, decision making, what is happening around the world, all that impacts on this. So they need a strategy. That is something that is very important when you are playing, when you are running a simulation like Phone Ventures. That this is not something that you'll close your eyes and just tick a few boxes and that'll then alleviate all weaknesses that you had as a team. So this is something that is very interesting, that you have to be conscious, you have to participate, and you have to have a point of view. And to do all of those things, you need to engage. And teams that do not do well are teams that do not engage. So this is the kind of background that obviously at the master's level, we are trying to develop abilities of students so that they can develop critical perspectives of what's going on. So I feel that by using the Phone Ventures as a simulation, and then marrying that with the team ranking as well as the blog posts, students have enough opportunities to develop their critical analysis skills, or their critical perspective. So the way this works is how I've represented it in this diagram. So in the first instance, you have a lecture on operations, let's say, and then they follow that lecture on operations, and then they participate in the phone manufacturing companies' decision making, where some of those decisions could be underscored by the theoretical perspective that they have got from the lectures. And then that decision making then is confirmed by the to the company, to Edumundo, and they get the decisions that have been made per team, and that then percolates into the algorithm, and the algorithm then ranks the teams in different positions. And then after that, they have to reflect upon the decision making that took place, the discussions that took place. And so again, that might enable students to connect with operations management theory that they have learned in the first instance. And then again, so this goes on informing the gaps that exist. And so the cyclical pattern that obtains within this context is something that has been developed over time. And I see this becoming quite strong as we go forward. One of the other expectations, which is not probably as well defined here, is the development of managerial identity. So as decision making becomes reflective, as students interact with each other, as they develop conversations, as they engage with the major debates on sustainability, on the use of transportation and their carbon footprint, I think this also provides an opportunity for students to develop this capacity. This kind of managerial identity also develops, where there's a expectation of responsible management, decision making, and so that also tends to get factored into this whole process. So this is a kind of a cyclical process through which I think the Phone Ventures simulation helps students by marrying it into blog post writing and reflecting on how they have made their decisions. So, so as I was saying, the world is complex. There are various kinds of things that are happening which are entirely beyond our control. And many of these developments are quite unexpected. And so to be a successful manager, the response times need to be shorter. And the response time, sometimes there's a compulsion because it's a dynamic environment. And here, I think we have traveled quite a distance from Michael Porter's visualization of competitive advantage to a world where we need dynamic environment strategies. So hyper competition is something that you see in the decision making, in the way companies have to react today. And hyper competition is an environment where every day competitors are fine-tuning their offer, fine-tuning their prices. And I feel that this simulation enables students to get that understanding of that hyper market, where there's no time and within which you have to quickly come up with a strategy. Otherwise, you'll be taken out of the market. So so this is something that I feel is very important. Understanding competitive behavior is also another dimension which sort of attaches itself to dynamic environment strategies. So here also you look at your company through the eyes of your competitors, and you can kind of destroy your organization on paper and then build it up as if you are peering at your organization through the eyes of your competitors. So that again kind of outlines the level of risk taking that has to go in line with the unexpected developments that are there. So the simulation, it seems to me, offers this platform whereby you see the consequences of your decisions. every week there'll be a new ranking. So the new ranking tells you that your competitors are also doing things which will enable them to acquire competitive advantages. So the major distinction between Porter's work and now what we see is this, that competitive advantage is acquired by organizations, and then this competitive advantage gets eroded over time. Again, companies acquire competitive advantage, again, that gets eroded. And I feel Phone Ventures adequately demonstrates that through the opportunities that students get, because this is a dynamic environment. This is nothing to do with sustainable competitive advantage as visualized, as conceptualized by Michael Porter. And so this is very different. And so no company today thinks that it is going to be at the top of the ranking list for life. Every day there are new developments, every day there are new things coming in. And so they have to have dynamic strategies. And so again, Phone Ventures, I feel, enable students to understand that dynamism, that their positions might change. No company can remain at the top all the time. So there will be certain things, certain decisions made by competitors which will take them ahead of others. And I feel this enables students to develop critical narratives, and narratives around the fact that sometimes they might have reluctantly supported an idea which might have succeeded later on, or the opposite of that also is common. And I feel that as time passes by, when we get to the 8th year, there are lots of students who understand the strength of teamwork, which initially, when they get in, they are reluctant to participate. And I suppose that there is no story to tell if you don't participate. And increasingly, when we are trying to develop critical perspectives among students, the blog post is a platform where they can do that. They can provide this critical narrative in the decision making, or looking at the decision making that has taken place. I feel, in addition to all of this, Edumundo is an organization that really understands the pulse of student expectations, because this is the first organization that has connected the outcomes of the simulation to LinkedIn. I mean, this is really thinking in a very cohesive, creating a cohesive platform. So teams, when they finish the simulation, they get a certificate, and they can put this certificate and then get endorsed by Edumundo in LinkedIn. So I think this whole thing has impressed upon our students in a much better fashion than just theoretical learning that we can provide. Theoretical learning has its own place, but until a manager experiences the real world, it doesn't filter in, it doesn't stay in our minds. And so this kind of combination of decision making, and then reflecting upon it, and then connecting it to a professional platform like LinkedIn, I think is quite optimal in the way the simulation is used. In this lecture, or in this presentation, one of the academics whose work has influenced me quite a lot is Diane Lorillard. And Diane Lorillard developed this idea of conversational learning. And I think in higher education, in universities around the world, the greater the ability for students to participate in conversations, to participate in a way that they own their knowledge at the end of a cycle of learning, which a simulation provides. If that is not there, again, it becomes short-lived. The whole the gain in learning that takes place. And I think Phone Ventures offers that conversational dimension, so students can connect to the important conversations that are going on, and those can be reflected in the assessments that we develop. So I think reflective practice is a key part of developing those conversations, and experiential learning. So learning by doing things, and learning by experiencing competitive behavior. These are quite important in the conceptualization of simulation-based learning. I think increasingly organizations will have to adopt simulation as a key tool to deliver teaching and learning. And I think Phone Ventures does offer that to our students. The students are quite happy in the way they have been rewarded by, and as I was saying, this connection to LinkedIn, to converse with a professional community, opportunities to do that. I think these have really helped our group of students.
I mean, thanks for that. That was really insightful and really interesting. Thank you for for sharing that. Before we just go to the audience, actually, to see if anyone's got any questions that they'd like to ask you directly, perhaps I'll just say something, which is, I think on your second slide, you mentioned about the structure of the teams and how often you find that teams will choose, like, maybe to be in, one member might be in charge of operations, one might be in charge of HR, and this sort of, I think that's quite interesting, because I think in Phone Ventures as well, not only can you do it in that way, as you say, or have like everyone taking an equal role and it be more sort of democratic, I suppose, but also we sometimes see that there's an opportunity for each team member to take responsibility for a geographic area as well. So perhaps one might be the Asia director and one might be the Europe director and so forth. But it's interesting. So you don't advocate to your students particularly that they take one approach over the other. You very much just leave it to them, right?
Yeah. We have changed this approach. In the past, we used to recommend various things. We also used to choose the teams. Now we don't, because it can lead to all sorts of challenges later on. Although in the real world you can't choose your colleagues or the place of work, but we find that the students should own the whole thing, the whole exercise, and so we let them choose their teammates, as well as if they want a particular strategy to adopt, that is either geography based or discipline based, or whatever they want to.
Absolutely. I thought it was particularly interesting as well, what you were saying about the blog posts, and how at the start, very often the perception from students is that 500 words will be quite an undertaking, to complete. But actually, once they've spent some time in the simulation, it becomes clear that actually, there's no problem writing 500 words, because there's so much to consider, right? All of the different parts within the simulation.
Yes.
Okay, well, from the audience, are there any questions for Dr. Amit Mitra? Feel free to take yourselves off mute and ask directly if you like, or put a question in the chat as well. Either is fine. Okay, well, I don't think so. If you do have any questions afterwards, feel free to follow up, and I'm sure Amit, we can pass those questions on directly to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks so much for being involved today, Amit. That's really helpful.
Thanks. Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. And I'm going to pass over to my colleague Milo now, who's going to, I think, deliver a couple of slides. Right, Milo?
That's correct. That's correct. Thanks, Amit, for today. Thanks, Leon. My name is Milo Hendrik, the director of Edumundo. As you can hear from my funny accent, I'm Dutch, and I'm calling in from the Netherlands. And I've been asked in 10 minutes to give you a very brief, quick demo about the management simulation we're going to play today in breakout rooms after my 10-minute presentation. So let's get started by sharing my entire screen. And if all correct, you can see this presentation now. it's only 2 slides, and I will log into the simulation itself to show you how it's played. Yeah, well, it's going to be a lot of fun, I'm sure. So what we normally do, if you have a group of students, we will split them into teams of about 4 students, could be 5, could be 3, and each student team will manage their own globally operating smartphone companies, such as Apple or Samsung, because they can all relate to it, same as myself. Those things are glued to our hands these days, isn't it? Well, at least for the students they are. They will play it in rounds today as well. So we will play it in a couple of rounds today, and every round stands for 1 year of operations. And every round you have to go through the same cycle of internal, external analysis, what happened internally and externally in the world and in my company. And then we ask the students to update their strategic focus, to determine some goals, etc. And after that, they have to take operational decisions on tactical level for all different departments in different countries and areas in the world, and for their company, of course. So, as I said, today we will play about 2 rounds, but normally it will last for between 6 and 8 rounds. And most often it's played 1 round a week. Students can play it during your seminar classes or in their own time. Today it will be quite a pressure cooker, because we only have about 40 minutes for the first round, where normally we will give students about, well, at least 1.5 hours for the first round. Anyway, when we start with this simulation, the first round, it starts smaller, so you can only do business with your smartphone company in the UK, in the Netherlands, and in Belgium. But every round we will play, more and more countries will open their borders for foreign investors, which allows you to do, well, to expand your business to other countries as well. So the bigger markets, let's say China, Brazil, the US, those will open up later on in the simulation when you first get to sort of get used to the system a little bit. It's highly competitive, so it means that from now on, it's not fun anymore. It will be quite a struggle. It will be a game. It will be losers and winners. We are direct competitors. So it means that if we will be a team here, we will lower our price a little bit in a certain market segment, for example. We will really sort of steal some market share and some demand from the other teams. So, well, and that will reflect, of course, in the results of the other teams as well as in the ranking points. So you can imagine what that does with the student engagement. They really like it, they really want to win, and that's a mindset we use for them to absorb all the frameworks and information we put in the simulations. So students learn more because they like it. Anyway, it's an equal start situation. So you cannot say, well, we had better numbers at the start than the other company, that's why we lost. No, it's a start situation, everyone is exactly the same. So the balance sheet, what you've sold, what you have in stock, the market shares, etc., is exactly the same. So it's a fair competition. Now, let me show you the simulation itself. You can see my blue screen if all goes well. It's a website, as you can see. I will put it full screen though, make it big, a little bit bigger. What you find here is, well, sort of an overview of the world, and you can see that only a couple of countries are sort of colored here. And last year, we've only done some business in the UK, and not yet in the Netherlands, in Belgium. So that's something for us to think about in the first round. And as I said, later on, more and more countries will open up. So what I always ask students to do first is go to their company profiles. And if you go to company profile, there are some questions, for example, about your company branding, like what will be your name, your global name for your company. They can also change their passwords or add their names to the team and add choose a position in the team, for example. But for today, I would say, given the short time we have, focus on the company name and then move on. Then there's the business plan. And of course, they first have to do some of the analysis before they can think about their strategic questions. So what you see with students normally is that they will start clicking back and forth between all these different tabs and different departments to do their analysis and to think about all the strategic and operational options. But I'll just go, well, work my way through the main menu a little bit. So the business plan, for example, what is your competitive strategy of Porter? Will you be sort of focusing on a cost leadership strategy or product leadership? Then students can elaborate in the bottom here, justify their strategic decisions. We ask them to do a SWOT analysis, of course. We also ask them to think about their vision. Will you be, for example, focusing on a sustainable future or perhaps premium smartphones and global gender equality? Once they've chosen 3, they can even prioritize those before they really start working on their vision. Very important for today are the targets. So in the balanced scorecard you find here, they can choose 5 targets. So for example, we can choose profit as a percentage of turnover. Once chosen, it's green. And then we can set our own exact objective. For example, we think that next year we will achieve 20% profit. If you're very ambitious, you get more points if you achieve your target. But other targets are about who will be the market leader in the lowest price segment or the high quality segments. What's the education level of my staff? Are they still motivated? Those kind of things. So then there are, of course, the decisions and some extra analysis you can do. So if you first go to communication, for example, you go to news items, you'll find at the start of each round new news messages, which will tell you something about what's happening in the world. So there could be a global financial crisis, there could be pandemics, there could be trade wars between Europe and China. All kinds of things will happen on a global level and which really have an impact on the demands, etc., in the different markets. So you really have to analyze those and and think about the impact. You also find the schedule here, the simulation schedule, which is always in your own time zone. So I'm in the Netherlands, so it's 4:30, but first round will end 3:30 in UK time. If you go to the operational decisions, this is where more the gameplay starts, so to say. What you find here is an overview of your company. You can hover over with your mouse to see all departments. And there's even a small football table here during the breaks, really cool. In the sub-menu, you find all the same departments as well. So if you go to countries, we can see the countries in which we can do business now. And let's say we'd like to do a little bit of analysis for Belgium. We click on Belgium, and on the right side of the screen, you find a nice picture of this thing in Brussels. Some introduction text, our yearly costs, our sort of maintenance cost if we open a new office in Belgium. We'll also find how the market segments look like. So for example, the price segment consists of about almost 800,000 smartphones a year in Belgium, meaning that there's about 800,000 people who want to buy a cheap smartphone next year. Then we have the quality segment, about 300,000 in Belgium. And then the third segment is customer intimacy, meaning a very strong relation with your customer, something Apple has very strongly, for example. So these are the main market segments to analyze. And also, for example, the productivity and the salaries of my local employees, and something about Hofstede's cultural dimensions, which are different, of course, for each of the countries. Once you decide to enter this country, click the box and a whole bunch of local decisions will pop up. And later on in the breakout rooms, we will show you how that's done and work our way through it, setting our price, etc. Other things in the main menu here, for example, choosing new managers, organizational structures, locating your headquarters to different countries, which have pros and cons. As I said, you can hire new managers. There's a whole bunch of people who'd like to work for you or who are not interested yet because, well, you can only hire the CEO of Facebook if you're really big and not if you're a small startup, so to say. There's other decisions here to take for the HR department, a whole bunch of decisions about hiring more people, bonus schemes, remunerations, all kinds of stuff. Product is about R&D. You can start with a 1-star quality product, which is cheaper, or a 5-star, which is more expensive, but higher quality. And if you'd like to unlock star 6 and star 7, you first have to do serious investments in R&D. There's distribution, logistics service providers to choose with different carbon footprints, for example. Global marketing decisions about online campaigns and search engine optimization and price per click for Google AdWords, a whole bunch of sort of global online decisions to take for marketing. Once we've taken all these decisions, we click save on the bottom of each page, and then we wait until the deadline is there. It starts calculating, only takes a couple of minutes. Then we find an update of our results. So we see in the results section always the results of the previous years. For example, in the income statement, we can currently see that last year we made a profit of 20 million, which is quite good. Let's see if we could improve that this year. We'll also find how many people are working for us, how many have left, are they still happy? Those kind of things. Inventory overviews. I think that's it for now. But there's also, of course, a ranking, and the ranking list will be updated with our own company names, our own score we have gained, the points we've gained, and the change in compared to the previous round. So after each round, this will be updated, and of course the competition really starts then. There's a bit more, of course, to show you, but we will do that during the Q&A session after one round. And I will now just go back to my presentation over here. Final slide, the schedule for now. So in a minute from now, you will be automatically, by my colleague Gijs, our operations manager, automatically put in the different rooms. One of the Edumundo colleagues, myself, or one of the other ones, will host that room and will share their screen and will start clicking around with your guidance and discuss what to do, etc. So yeah, you will have some teammates. We don't know exactly who it is. It's a bit random. So I would suggest to first start introducing yourselves and say, well, who you are, of course, where you're from, maybe what's your subject, what's your main subject. So we have about 40 minutes for the first round. Then at 3:30 UK time, we all come back to the main room for a 5 minutes sort of Q&A, the sort of feedback session in which Gijs, my colleague here, our operations manager, will demonstrate some of the analysis tools in the simulation in more depth. Then we have another quick round, only 20 minutes, round 2. And after that, towards the end, there's the winner ceremony, of course, which will be led by Leon, I'm sure. So that's the schedule for today. I think we're ready to start.
Yeah, that's it. That's great. Thank you, Milo. So yeah, we'll go into the breakout rooms now, and we'll see you back here for 3:30 then, back in the main room.
Good luck, everyone. May the best team wins.
Well, that's the end for today. I had some great conversations with the people in my breakout room, so feel free to connect, of course, on LinkedIn, or to ask me any questions regarding the simulation or any of the products that we offer. Thank you so much for today, and Leon, over to you.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for hosting the Q&A sessions and the sort of breakout rooms and everything, and setting all that up. It's been really good. And thanks really, well, thanks very much to everyone who's participated in this. It's been really great to actually spend a bit of time going into more detail than we normally do on our webinars, because our webinars are more usually focused on a higher level in terms of the simulations in general. So it's been really nice to go into that level of detail. Thanks again to Amit, who was our guest speaker today. I believe he's already left. He's had to go off to another meeting, but it was really great to have him speak today and to share his experience of how he used this simulation at UE. So I think, yeah, without further ado, let's probably call to an end. If any of you would like to follow up with any questions that you have afterwards, please let us know, and we'll be delighted to answer any questions that you have. And if you'd like any follow-up meetings or demonstration codes or one-to-one meetings with us, then of course that's fine too. Okay, session is over. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.